You've seen the headlines, right? The US debt limit. It sounds kind of responsible, doesn't it? But then you see these bizarre political fights, and it just doesn't add up. So, in this explainer, we're going to get to the bottom of it. Let's dive in.
Okay, get this. One source called it a financial weapon of mass destruction. Wow. I mean, that really nails the central puzzle, right? How can something that's supposed to be a restraint also be a weapon? It's this crazy paradox, and that's exactly what we're going to unpack. So, what is this strange, self-inflicted problem all about? Yeah, that's the big question, isn't it? And by the end of this, I promise you'll get it. You'll understand not just the what, but the why. Why this whole crisis seems to happen over and over again. Turns out, it's not an accident. All right, so to crack this case, first we have to understand who holds the purse strings in the US government. It really just boils down to two key players. You've got Congress and you've got the president. And this division of power is absolutely crucial. Think of it like this. The president's team is in charge of collecting the taxes and then spending the money to, keep the lights on. But, and this is the big but, it's Congress that actually holds the real power. They're the ones who decide how high the taxes are, and most importantly, they write the budget that tells the president exactly what to spend money on. So, you know how you always hear people talking about the president's budget? Well, the reality is kind of the exact opposite of what most of us think. When it comes to the money, the president is legally required to just follow the orders that Congress gives them. So let's break down the actual chain of command. Step 1, Congress writes the budget. Step 2, Congress sets the tax levels. And step 3, the president is legally bound to spend that money. No ifs, ands, or buts. They have to spend it, exactly how Congress said to. Okay, so you see what's happening here. You've got one group deciding how much to spend and another group that's legally forced to do the spending. It's a perfect recipe for a collision. And this is where the debt limit enters the picture. Now, this thing isn't in the Constitution or anything. It's just a separate law, also made by Congress, by the way, that basically puts a cap on how much money the government is allowed to borrow. On the surface, that sounds pretty responsible, right? Like a way to keep debt in check. But here's where it all starts to go sideways. Pretty much every year, Congress passes a budget that's just packed with spending, for roads, the military, all that stuff. The problem is, they don't set taxes high enough to actually pay for it all. So what's the president supposed to do now? Remember, the president has to spend the money that Congress ordered, but the tax money coming in just isn't enough. So the only legal way out, the only way to follow the law, is to borrow money to cover the difference. And this is the key takeaway here. Borrowing isn't a choice. It's a legal requirement to pay for spending that Congress already greenlit. This whole thing creates a situation that's, it's basically like that old playground taunt, stop hitting yourself, right? Congress forces the president to borrow money and then turns around and yells at the president for borrowing too much. It's this completely absurd political game, and the whole economy is put at risk because of it. Okay, let's stop for a second and bust a huge myth. When you hear politicians fighting about raising the debt limit, it has nothing, and I mean nothing, to do with approving new spending. It's not like asking your bank to raise your credit card limit so you can go on a shopping spree. Let's be crystal clear about this. Raising the debt limit is like paying the credit card bill for stuff you've already bought. It's all about making sure the government can pay for things that Congress already approved, things it's legally on the hook for. So what's the big deal if they don't raise it? Well, the US government would actually default on its bills. That means Social Security checks might stop, troops might not get paid, that company that just repaved a highway, they don't get their money. This would completely shatter trust in the US government, and because the entire global economy is basically built on that trust, the fallout would be nothing short of catastrophic. Which brings us to the final piece of the puzzle. If a default would be so disastrous, and if they always end up raising the limit anyway, why on earth do we go through this insane, high-stakes drama every single time? It's a perfectly logical question, right? Why would you intentionally create a crisis that you know you're just going to have to fix later? The answer, as it turns out, has nothing to do with economics. The answer is actually really simple and maybe a little cynical. It's politics. That's it. The debt limit crisis is a completely manufactured event, and it's designed for a very specific political reason. Here's the political playbook. It's basically a 4-step plan. First, Congress creates the problem out of thin air. Step 2, they point the finger at the president and blame them for reckless spending, the very spending they ordered. Third, they hold the solution hostage, because only they can raise the limit.
And finally, they use that threat of economic meltdown as a giant bargaining chip to force through their demands on totally unrelated stuff.
So, when you boil it all down, here's the bottom line. The debt limit isn't a tool for financial responsibility. Not really. It's a political weapon, one that Congress created so it can manufacture a crisis, blame it on the White House, and then use the fix as leverage.
And that leaves us with one last big question. If this is a totally self-made crisis, a problem the government literally creates for itself over and over, why do we still have it? Why does it still exist? It's definitely something to think about.